When people at Notre Dame want to hang out, chill out, or geek out, they go to the quad.
When they want to play, pray, or just get away, they go to the quad.
The quad's a place to talk about important ideas with good friends.
And that's what we do here on the Pod Quad Show. We're two Holy Cross priests and friends having curiosity conversations with interesting people. Talking about life. What is up, everybody? I'm Father Pete McCormick, and this is
Father Nate Wills.
And welcome back to the Pod Quad Show.
Woo-hoo.
You know, listen, we are in episode 5. Cinco. Episode 5. And here's the thing. We have officially been doing this for some time.
Yes.
I'm really happy to say that our YouTube channel, which I encourage you to subscribe to now, is cooking along. We also are doing great on Spotify and on Apple Music. Now, you were talking about an idea of jumping back onto MySpace.
Yeah, I think we should do that. I mean, it's bookmarked on my Netscape. It's really important to me.
So those of you who are big MySpace people, get out there.
That's such dated like me right now. I'm like, that's in the AOL chat room. All the young people are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Listen, just Wikipedia, it's fine. But trust me, it's really going well, and so grateful for the many ways that everyone's just been getting on board and being a part of these conversations. And we're really hoping that in some way, shape, or form, after listening to this conversation and these conversations, you can bring them wherever you find them and use the wisdom that is oozing out of our guests. Not so much the two of us, but that's okay. Speaking of our guests, Nate.
So excited. We're really excited to welcome a teaching professor here at the University of Notre Dame. Forrest Spence is such a great and well-received teacher. He teaches economics, he teaches statistics in these really huge classes, and somehow manages to make it feel small, to really kind of work, just focus on the dignity of each student. And that's like a really tough thing. So we wanted to talk to him and get his perspective on, like, how are you doing that? Like, what is, what's your approach? Our conversation with Father Kevin Grove, I mean, he's doing a similar thing, and it's really cool to see because Notre Dame focuses so much on the undergraduate experience, trying to help students feel seen and to help them to grow in knowledge and wisdom while they're still here. And just sometimes you end up in these really big classes, and trying to make them feel small is no easy thing.
No doubt. And so I say we kick to the conversation.
Let's do it.
All right, everybody, we're back, and we are joined by an incredible guest, Professor Forrest Spence.
Thank you.
Woo. How you feeling?
A little nervous. This is high stakes.
High stakes. When you come into the Pod Quad, you got to be ready. You got to have your A game.
I've done a lot of prep.
Well, thank goodness. Nate and I have been really excited about this conversation. You are a legendary teacher in so many ways, and you are beloved by our students on campus. And so really to have a chance to speak with you, hear a little bit of your wisdom, perspective, is really what we're looking forward to doing.
Thanks. I'm actually really humbled by that. So yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we're going to make sure, for those who do not know Professor Forrest Spence, I'm going to do a little intro, and then we're going to get right to it. So without further ado,
yes,
here we go. I always feel like I should be working for the Chicago Bulls right now. But maybe that's
don't do the let's get ready to rumble thing.
No, okay. All right. I'm sure that's copyrighted.
Yeah,
Never
exactly.
mind. Here we go.
Don't come after us.
Don't come after two priests. Please don't.
No
Professor Forrest Spence is an associate teaching professor of economics here at the University of Notre Dame. Here on campus, he is widely known for his thoughtful and engaging teaching and his ability to engage students in complex and economic concepts. Professor Spence is the director of undergraduate studies for the Department of Economics and has won a bunch of awards, and I emphasize a bunch, for teaching and mentoring students throughout his career. Forrest, welcome officially to the pod.
Thanks so much. Pumped to be here.
All right, so if we can kind of get right after this, could you talk a little bit about your journey into teaching? How it is that you got here and what it is that really inspires you?
Yeah, so sort of born and raised in the middle of state, South Carolina. Mm-hmm. I knew really early on, I feel blessed to have known this, that I wanted to teach. I went to a Montessori school for a few years, and there's a lot of teaching that goes on between grades because 4 through 6 are together and things like that, and there's a lot of student interactions, and I thought, okay, this is something that I'd like to pursue. Mm-hmm. I was always good at math and liked math, and so I went to the University of South Carolina once. I failed miserably, and so I drove a forklift for a little bit, and then I went back and studied math. I took an economics course in my sophomore year, and it was a way for me to sort of use math to think about what makes people tick and think about public policy and think about big social issues. I just fell in love, and I decided, okay, this is what I want to teach.
Yeah.
And I had thought at that time maybe I was going to be a high school calculus teacher. I thought, no, teaching at a university is selfishly teaching at a university is much nicer. So maybe I'll try to do this route. So I went to the University of North Carolina, did a PhD there in economics. By divine providence, ended up here in 2015. Like, I've gone to big state schools my entire life. I grew up in a household that was sort of apathetic or hostile to organized religion. I really had no idea what I was getting into coming up to Notre Dame. But there was a series of events that just sort of drew me here. And I was fortunate enough to come here in 2015. My job was just, I'm not tenure track faculty. I don't have any research responsibilities. I said, come here, teach 3 sections, big sections of principles of micro, and do a good job. And every year Notre Dame is in the department has given me the opportunity to sort of expand what I'm doing and grow as an individual. Being an educator is great, having this responsibility of sort of learning and then disseminating that knowledge. Yeah. And so here I am.
I have to follow up on one thing because you said so much right there, but then you also said forklift.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what you learned while driving that forklift?
Yeah. The first thing that popped in my head was that I didn't want to drive a forklift for the rest of my life. Honestly, that was the richest I've ever been in my life. I was living at home with my parents. I was 18.
Yeah.
I was working night shift at a Target distribution center, making night shift money. I worked 3 nights, 12 hours, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And it was a ton of fun. And it honestly was a ton of fun. But then it was one of these things where it's like, okay, at some point I need to probably get out of this and go do something else.
Yeah, I oftentimes think that sometimes we think there's a linear path through school.
Yeah.
I'm going to graduate, and then I'm going to, and even saying, you know what, I'm going to take a step out. Because we have students here at Notre Dame who just have to take a moment out, and then they come back with so much more focus and energy around what they're trying to accomplish. So I think it's really cool that's part of your story.
That was totally me. I started dating a girl. Hopefully my wife doesn't watch this. So I started dating a girl right before I went back to school, and she got good grades, and I was just like, well, I can get good grades too. And it was a complete turnaround. It's just like random things, help me sort of get on this path to ultimately be here.
So I too worked in a warehouse.
Yeah.
And they did not trust me with a forklift. So
I had the good job.
Props. Yeah. Props, man.
That's pretty awesome. So you're an economics professor, and students talk about the fact that the Scottish historian Thomas Carlyle once referred to economics as the dismal science. Why do you think economics has that kind of reputation, and how do you combat that?
Yeah. We talk about public policy issues, especially when we're talking about macroeconomics. I was actually just doing this morning. We're talking about, okay, the Fed's trying to engineer a soft landing, so they're trying to, bring inflation down without generating a recession, but they're willing to, generate a recession if that's necessary to sort of bring inflation under control. And then I'm looking at this room of guys, and I'm like, also, we're talking about this in very clinical terms, which is one of the reasons why people maybe don't like economists.
Now, when I think about this, of course, we can't control what people ultimately think. But at the same time, you so clearly demonstrate that you care in terms of learning your students' names and being there for them in a variety of different ways. Is this something that you came into this profession thinking that this is what I want to really define my terms based upon? Or is it something that over time you realize, no, I have this really complicated thing that I want to be able to teach, and this is a way that I can demonstrate that not only I care, but it opens the world of economics to these students?
Man, that's such a good question. I think it's both, and my mentality's probably changed over time. When I first got here, I'd been sort of steeped in PhD studies for 6 years. It's highly technical, and I had to zoom out and it's okay, I have to teach principles of micro, which is, it's basic in some sense. It's principles, and there's no prerequisite knowledge required, but it's very deep stuff, and it's very broad. And I didn't know much about economics, if I'm now being honest, 10 years later. And so I think when I first came in, my main job was, okay, I need to give students resources to be successful in demonstrating mastery over the curriculum, right? That was my main goal. Over time, I guess I do put more emphasis on the human part of it. It's just easier at a place like Notre Dame, too. I mean, it's at big state schools, I very much felt like I had a contractual relationship where I give them some money, they give me courses, I do work, and then I get a degree, and I move on. And I didn't realize that how different Notre Dame was. I'm certainly glad that this is a different equilibrium in some sense than the big state schools, and I love it. And I hope to stay here for the rest of my career.
That's cool. When you think about the discipline of learning your students' names, I mean, how many students do you have in all your courses this semester?
Like a little more than 400.
What's your approach? How do you go about coming to know students in that way?
I had a student tell me on Monday. She said, everyone thinks you have a photographic memory.
Yeah.
I was going to say photogenic memory. Photographic memory. Photographic memory.
Your memory may also be
which suggests that maybe I don't have a photographic memory. And I'm holding all of these online photo things for my courses where I have little panels. I don't know if the students know this. It's a little bit creepy, but we have all of their pictures and their names, and I spent a long time, in the lead up to a semester and during the semester, just trying to memorize their names. And I'm not sure if I'd rather be known as being like a tireless worker or somebody who has a photographic memory, but it is just a matter of effort.
That's right.
But in some sense, it's low hanging fruit. I mean, part of what we're trying to instill upon our students is, this respect for the human dignity of everybody, and not knowing somebody's name and having a conversation with them is, it's not that. And so it just seems like a natural part of the process.
But it would be so easy to cut that part of the process out. That's right. 'Cause it's not like you're sitting around thinking to yourself, what am I ever going to do?
Yeah.
So, but mad props for taking the time to demonstrate that you care that much.
Yeah, I guess.
That's really great. And so doing that takes obviously a huge amount of effort. What effect do you think that has on the students in a class, let's say statistics, that is maybe, how would you say, objectively boring?
Oh, yeah. Speaking of Rate My Professor review.
There it
We're going to get all the statistics people in the comments like, this is terrible. Stats hate should never be a thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think just like you two guys, like I have a shtick, and like I get in front of people and something sort of turns on, and knowing people's names and treating it more like a conversation, sort of a lateral conversation, just makes it less dismal.
Yeah.
Hopefully a little bit less boring. During COVID, our provost at the time sent an email saying, students' mental health are failing. Here's a list of things you should do. One of those things was you should think about showing pictures of your students' pets during class. And I get this email at 10 o'clock at night. I'm trying to figure out how to deliver this synchronous Zoom delivery, all this stuff. And I'm furious. I'm so mad that this is all I needed to do to teach during COVID was dog pictures. And so I sent a real salty email to one of my classes. I'm like, we're having a new segment. Send me some dog pictures, and I started putting these dog pictures in class on the slides, and it was the best thing I'd ever done. Because it only took a couple seconds, and it really did it provided a lot of levity, and yeah. So there's lots of times where I have moments like this where I take myself too seriously, and that's maybe I have a lot to learn.
That's terrific, though. I love it.
As the great Snoop Dogg once said, bow, wow, wow, yippee, yo, yippee, yay.
We get sued for that, too. Great. All right.
Please don't come at me, Snoop Dogg.
U.S. ambassador. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
He's an ambassador for all the United States.
No, that's right.
I mean, geez Louise.
All right. So while a lot of your students are focusing on the positive on the Rate My Professor, if you're like my students, there's an occasional evaluation that stings just a little bit. So all of us have to deal with criticism in some way, shape, or form in our lives. And we tend to ignore the positive comments and focus on the negatives. How do you let go of those critiques? Asking for a friend.
Yeah. I guess in some sense I do focus on those, but at this point, one of the nice things about being older is I just feel emotions less strongly. I just feel these negative swells. If I had gotten some of the evals that I do now, when I first got here, I would have found it really disheartening. But I think with time, you realize okay, we judge them the entire semester. right? Like we're constantly evaluating our students. And so one responsibility we have is to try and model that type of judgment and evaluation in, a professional way that, respects, the dignity of every person.
That's right.
But the other part of that is like, okay, I also have to realize that, that when they have an opportunity to provide reciprocal judgment, they're going to come at it from emotional places sometimes.
Yep,
and
sure.
by and large, the students here are amazing, and they're like more generous to me than I probably deserve. But occasionally students are mad, and I do actually read these. Maybe I shouldn't, but I had one comment. I taught stats for the first time here last semester, and there's a comment on Rate My Professor. Oh, the board work was sloppy and whatever. And I was, oh. But then I actually thought about it. He's like, no, like he or she is. That's absolutely right. Like I could really tighten that up. And so we'll see how this semester goes. But that's like, I don't know.
You're working on your penmanship. That's good.
Yeah, that's right. That's where I'm at.
That's awesome.
There was no actionable advice there. I don't know. Sorry.
No, that's good. I mean, I think the wisdom that comes with age and experience to like let things go, to see in the bigger picture. And I love that notion too of like putting yourself in the space of a student who's like, we're doing some evaluation and assessment of them.
They're constantly
They're
being
gonna do it to
judged
us.
all semester, right? So yeah.
Now, Notre Dame is not the only classroom that you occupy. You also make the 40-minute trip west down the toll road to Westville Correctional, where you participate in the Moreau Initiative that is run by Holy Cross College. This, for those who don't know, is really a chance to be able to educate those inmates who are at Westville Correctional in a really powerful way. I had the chance a couple years ago to give the keynote address.
Did you
for
at the
commencement.
graduation?
Yeah, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And I was just so inspired, and I thought to myself, that the real heroes here were twofold. One, the inmates who said, no, you know what, education is actually a true path to conversion and to understanding, but also the professors who come in each and every week to be able to be a part of that process. So could you talk a little bit about how you got involved with that and why you keep doing it?
I think ever since grad school, I'd been interested, and I knew this was a thing, and I tried to get into it. And then a member of the department, Kirk Doran, was doing this when I got here, and he was trying to get involved with some other things, and so he basically passed the reins to me. And it's one of these things. I heard someone in the Center for Social Concerns give a speech one time, and he's like, look, at the end of the day, like if I fall down dead, they're going to find somebody else to stand up and lecture, the next day, and and things are going to run smoothly around here. And it's not exactly true, but I kind of feel that way sometimes at Notre Dame, that like, look, you take what's my wins above replacement? It's probably pretty low at a place like this. Like, they're going to get great faculty members to come here and teach these incredibly talented students who probably don't need me at all, if I'm just being honest. But out at the correctional facility, they do need more people, and the guys out there, it is all guys. They really appreciate it in a different way than Notre Dame students sometimes, and they really push me. I was out there this morning. These are the guys that I'm talking about recessions with, and these are guys that have been disenfranchised and marginalized, and it's like, look, like I gotta talk to you about this in like sort of a clinical way, but like I'm not trying to dehumanize the process of what's happening in the economy.
That's right.
And they pushed me to really, I had somebody drop the same class 2 years ago because he's like, I don't feel like I'm a part of this process. I don't like this. And, looking back, and it sticks with me. Like I should have done a better job of like not framing things in a way that didn't make him feel like he was, not a part of it and just wanted to like completely like just like exit.
What I think is really fascinating about that portion of the population is that they're oftentimes the ones who are impacted by these inflationary and economic realities that some people at different facets in the socioeconomic spectrum might be able to weather just a little bit more.
Yeah.
But for them to be able to raise their hand and say, Professor Spence, this is the insight that I have.
Yeah.
It's got to be really enlightening.
No, like a guy a couple years ago was like, no, I lost my job in Elkhart in 2008 when the first thing people stop buying are RVs.
Yep.
Like, it's like it's real stuff to them, and sometimes in ways that it's not to our students yet, but partly just by the process of our students are generally pretty young, right? And so they're
right.
yeah.
Right on, man.
That's
Right on.
awesome. All right, so we've reached the last question that we ask every guest on the Pod Quad. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given that you can pass along to Pod Quad Nation?
I kind of don't like advice.
Dun, dun, dun.
One thing that I try and instill upon students here is that, like, you all are adults now. You're going to be given a lot of advice, and you're going to hear a lot of things from different people, and that's awesome. But you know more about yourself than anybody else.
Right.
I guess. Okay, so I'm going to say that, and then I guess I do have a piece of advice, which is we have lots of students here who are so talented and thoughtful, but they're in this incredibly competitive, high-performing environment. When they're thinking about what they want to do after graduation, or even as a major or things like that, I do try and instill upon them, or whatever, that if you're not doing something you're passionate about, if you're doing something for prestige or for money, it's going to be really, really hard to do a good job.
Yep.
I mean, it's possible in the short run to kind of grind through stuff, but in the long run, if you're not doing something you're passionate about, like, you're not going to do a good job, and then you're going to be miserable, and whatever that short run benefit of having some prestige or whatever, have your people look up to you or something, or that is not worth it. And so if you can try and just pursue what you're passionate about, even if it's not what your friends think is like the cool thing or the lucrative thing to do, like, maybe that's the right thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you very much. It's nice to hear that from an economics professor saying, like, the economics just don't check out on that.
That's right. Your marginal productivity, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, yeah, sure. Yes.
And now we're going to bring a whiteboard in. And we're going to check your penmanship.
Yeah, I know. Oh, gosh. I hope no one from stats watches me this semester. like they'll be like, aha, I knew it.
Forrest, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Listen, we look forward to seeing you around the campus, but all of you come back, and thanks for hanging out with us on the Pod Quad.
All right, welcome back. That was such a great conversation, and here we are at the segment we call the Juice Box. This is where we talk about what gave us juice in that conversation. Cheers.
Cheers.
And I gotta tell you, there's a whole lot from Forrest Spence that gave me juice.
Right on.
How about you?
Well, first I got to apologize. I was so thirsty for this quality juice here. I took a sip before cheersing you, so that's on me.
Oh, that's all right.
That's on me.
I thought you were going to say I drank the whole thing. I was like, man, you got to leave a little juice.
There's always a little juice in the tank here on the Pod
That's
Quad.
good. I like it.
All right, so what I loved about what Forrest said was this intentional way that he learns names.
Yeah.
Like, to me, a name is so very important. It's biblical, right? We see it in Isaiah 43.
Nice.
Yeah, well, you looked that up earlier,
That's
in
all right.
fairness. But, I have called you by name. It's how it is that our Lord looks upon us, that we are children of God, and for him to model that in a way. And I can remember when I was the rector of a dorm on campus, like, that's what I did. What he described, I'm sitting there just looking through, and every night before I go to bed, I would read through the dorm roster with the goal of, like, can I learn 10 more names tonight? Because that is a really impactful thing when you see that same student the next day and you're like, hey, Bill, or hey, whomever. It just really makes a big difference. And so to me, like, I've been always very grateful for the people in my life who've been great models of that. And certainly Forrest is a great example.
Yeah, I love the way, too, that he said, students think I have a photographic memory. No, he just works really hard on
Bingo.
it, right? And put in the effort, because you're exactly right. Like, that's such a moment to feel seen.
That's right.
To feel known by somebody who puts in the effort to say, like, Nate, what you have to say. I mean, I would be blown away if I were his student. I remember when I thought Father Bill Miscampbell knew my name when he was on the quad, and he was saying hi to me, and I only then realized later on that he's Australian. He was calling me mate, not Nate. It's fine.
So close.
It's fine.
Shout out to Father Bill.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit about what juiced you up here.
So many things. I love what he talked about at the end about Westville, right? Like that was just such an amazing thing. You and I both worked at different times in our priestly ministry, right? As a seminarian for me, in correctional facilities. And it's a place where, honestly, you have to just be really real. Like, people don't put up with anything else, right?
No.
And I love what he said about, just the challenge that's been for him to be really real and to recognize as you said too, like the economic factors affect folks in different ways, and to just acknowledge that impact right there. I don't know. I think it has a really grounding way. I love the fact that he is reaching out to the community. I love the fact that Holy Cross College is doing this really important ministry, and I think it's beautiful to think about. I mean, this is, a really important thing that the Lord says, Matthew 25, right? Like when I was in prison, did you visit me, right? Like this is really important. Jesus doesn't often say like, hey, here's a bunch of things to do to get into heaven. That he speaks directly. This is how you get, the separate the sheep from the goats, right? And that was part of it. So, I mean, he's living out that mission of Notre Dame in the community in such a beautiful way. I love that. I'm impressed by that. And he does it in a way where he's just like, yeah, that's just the thing that I do.
Yeah. It just flows out of him.
Yeah.
Like, this is one of those things. Like it's a 45-minute drive from campus. It's not exactly close. So to go out and teach a singular class, that's an hour and a half in the car.
Yeah.
And that does not count, ladies and gentlemen, the amount of time that it takes to get through security.
Right.
It's a real commitment.
Yeah. So much juice on that.
Right on. I'll drink to that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that's it. Episode 5.
In the bag, ladies and gentlemen.
Wrap it up. Great. Well, thanks so much for tuning in, and really grateful for all of you. Keep tuning in, and we'll see you on the quad.